In a way, I feel like reviewing a movie like this is a little bit difficult because if you really like it, it's going to be one of those where like you only like it because it's Scorsese, you only like it because you're supposed to like it. And if you don't like it, people will say, "Well, you just don't understand art and cinema. You just don't understand long movies and, why don't you just go watch like an Avengers movie or something?" And so like no matter if you like this or if you don't like this movie, I feel like you're going to be judged on one side of the spectrum, and there's hardly any room for middle ground anymore when it comes to movie reviews. You either have to give something a 10 out of 10 or you have to decide that you don't like it and go on a rant. And it's really hard to find that sort of middle ground. So, for me and this movie, I want to say a couple of things about it, or a couple of things that I feel about it, and I'll kind of give you just my general overall feelings that I kind of left the theater with. But first of all, I want to say Martin Scorsese, obviously, one of the most iconic filmmakers of our generation. The man is, getting up there in age, and I feel like if he has something important that he wants to say, he has a story that he wants to tell, he should pretty much be allowed to do whatever he wants. I think if anybody has earned the right to make any kind of movie they want, if he wants to make a 3.5 hour movie, if he wants to make a 7 hour movie, if he wants to make a movie about fidget spinners, I don't know. He can make a movie about whatever he wants to. I feel like he's earned that right. And so let the man make any kind of artistic film that he wants, especially the fact that he's still going so hard in his older age. Very few like directors that make it as far as him that haven't retired. A lot of their movies just start to fall flat over and over and over again, but Scorsese still has that kind of energy to him. He still has that passion to him. And I think that's a beautiful thing because at the end of the day, I do view film as an art form. Yes, it's entertainment. Yes, it can be fun. But I also feel like if you have something to say, if you have a story that you want to tell, if you have interesting, engaging characters that you want to showcase in a particular way to, spread awareness or just like send a message or just leave you with a feeling, whether that feeling is inspiration or disgust, whatever it is, film is that medium to do that. And sometimes I think with all the corporations and studios and franchises and stuff, sometimes we forget that film can be this sort of transcendent thing. It can be this thing where we all sit in theater together and experience the same thing at the same time, and all like our collective consciousness all feels the same thing. And I think that's really, really important. When it comes to the story of this movie, this is based on real historical facts, and it is something that I was not really aware of. And I think that, again, that is pretty much the point. General gist of this movie is it takes place in the 1920s in this town where this Osage community of Native Americans, they've become very wealthy because of all the oil on their land, and there is this sort of ploy or plan in order to kind of gain and garner all of this wealth. And it's not just like go in and massacre people. It's pretty much this slow, subtle, almost like, Scorsese kind of bringing in his like mafia film kind of aspect to it, where it's like this behind the scenes kind of thing where they're doing really manipulative things, like either getting into relationships and kind of shifting the bloodline over to themselves so that when their spouse dies, they'll inherit the wealth. And then they're also subtly doing these like assassinations on the side and taking out these wealthy people. And there's like poisoning and there's gunshots and there's, manipulation tactics that are going on. And it's all this stuff that's kind of simultaneously happening. And since the movie is based on true events, sometimes it can feel a little bit like a little bit, I guess the pacing can feel a little bit all over the place because, life, does not follow the flow or formula of a movie. You know what I mean? Like life is not a 3-act structure. So, sometimes simultaneously different things are happening at the same time. So, all these events have to be told in a way where we understand that all of it's happening all at once, with like insurance things going on and murders going on and also a building relationship and having children. And, none of it really flows, but I think the movie does a good job at least of kind of cohesing it all together in some type of way without really telling you the time skips. Similarly, like earlier in the year, Oppenheimer came out, which is another historical movie, and it didn't really explain the time skips, but you kind of understood them. This movie kind of works the same way with that, where you kind of understand that these things are happening over a longer period of time. But this is something tragic that went down in history that not a lot of people talk about. Like I said, me myself, I didn't really know about these events. I wasn't taught this in school. Nobody really mentioned this to me. Obviously, it was a very important, passionate thing for Scorsese to put out there. It's something that he wanted to make for a very long time. And I don't know anything really about like the Osage community or anything that happened there, so I'm not going to begin to give you a critique on the accuracy or how well they portrayed the society at the time, or kind of the Osage traditions, or maybe like visions that they would see, like the owl thing. Like I can't tell you whether or not that's accurate or not, but I feel like just from being a spectator that the movie did do it respectfully, and I think that everybody involved in the movie was on the top of their game. The acting, the cinematography, the editing, the musical score. I feel like everything is pretty much as good as it could have been for this movie, and it's a Scorsese movie. So yeah, it was done well. The performances were good. Everything was good about it. I think the things that stand out the most to me are the performances by Lily Gladstone and Robert De Niro. I think both of them were absolutely excellent. They'll probably get Academy Award nominations. DiCaprio's character kind of let me down a little bit, just because the character that he plays, like, DiCaprio's always good. And, this performance of his was a little bit more subdued, but that's because of his character. He's a little bit, I don't know, he's a little bit, lower intelligence. He's very manipulatable, if that's a word. He has a hard time making decisions for himself, and when he's forced with really difficult decisions, he kind of just goes along with whatever other people think is best for him. He also isn't very hands-on with the things that he's doing, like all of the shady stuff that's happening on the side. He usually pawns off to somebody else, so you don't really get to see DiCaprio, sink his teeth into too much, but it's very kind of subtle and reserved. But I wouldn't put it like the top of DiCaprio performances or anything like that. I think De Niro did a much better job in his role, but that's kind of like because his character isn't so much in the lead. He's not the focus. He's kind of like a mafia boss, just kind of like orchestrating everything from the shadows, but while still putting on that really friendly face in front of you, which is actually kind of one of the most terrifying things, the people that are doing horrible, disgusting things behind your back, but are also like really friendly, and like acting like your best friend up front. So that can be the most terrifying aspect. Lily Gladstone's character, she's very sympathetic. She's a wise character, but she's also inhibited by, she's dealing with like diabetes. She's dealing with like new medicine, and she's dealing with, of course, DiCaprio's character, who, their relationship it's so like complicated in a way, because they do care about each other, but also, there's so much like horrible shit going on behind the scenes. So it's like, if you really love someone, would you be doing these things? Probably not. But basically for me, this movie was pretty much exactly what I thought it was going to be. And that can be a good thing or a negative thing, depending on how you want to look at it. But I was really hoping, because of the actors involved and because of Scorsese, that it would throw something at me that I just didn't expect. Now, I know that I didn't really know, the history here, and it was interesting to find out, but just watching the movie itself, I could pretty much predict like everything that was going to happen throughout the course of the film up until the ending. And that wouldn't necessarily be so bad, but with a 3.5-hour runtime, that last hour I really, really felt. And, it's not that I don't like 3-hour movies. I love Magnolia. I love Seven Samurai. For Scorsese, I love Wolf of Wall Street. There's a lot of 3-hour movies that I enjoy. Titanic with DiCaprio. There's many, many 3-hour movies that I enjoy, but I just think because I pretty much was sitting there kind of realizing, like, once I got to the trial, like at the end, no spoilers really, but like the last act, like with the trial and everything, I just felt like I knew every single thing that was going to happen beat by beat. And I just was kind of like waiting for it to reach its climax, waiting for it to reach its conclusion. And that's where the film became like a little bit of a slog for me. And I know that like film bros are going to come at me and be like, you don't understand. And I was like, I get it. You know what I mean? I'm saying it's a good movie. And that I enjoyed it. But I will say that I definitely felt that runtime in the last hour. And most particularly is because I felt like the last hour was kind of, again, because it has to follow historical events, I feel like the last hour was the weakest, because the last hour kind of delved into the FBI investigation and the trial and stuff like that. And it wasn't quite as interesting to me as the first two acts of sort of like, De Niro and everybody kind of orchestrating things behind the scenes and wondering, if they were going to be able to pull it off, or, what was happening with that. Like, there wasn't enough tension there for me. There wasn't enough kind of fear for the characters for me. Even Lily Gladstone's character, you know, she gets some like bad stuff is happening to her, but I didn't, even without knowing the history, like I didn't think it would go like as far, you know, as it could have. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I'm just gonna say that I personally really did feel the runtime, especially in the last hour. Now, that's not me saying that this movie shouldn't have been 3.5 hours. I think again, Scorsese should be able to do whatever he wants. I think he's earned it. You know, if he wants a 3.5 hour movie, he should do it. And I'm also not saying that I hate long movies. I'm just saying for me personally, in this particular long movie, I definitely felt the last hour and I felt like it dragged. That's for me personally. And that's not a slight against the artistry of the movie. That's not a slight against the message of the movie or the importance that this movie exists or bringing awareness to the horrible events that happened here. I understand all that and I respect all that. I'm just saying, for me, the last hour felt very slow. And it actually reminded me of the fact that I wish movies did do intermissions again. I wish that we had an intermission. I think this movie could have benefited from one. You know, just like a 15, 20-minute break in the middle to kind of like stretch your legs or, you know, go grab some food or go to the bathroom. Shockingly, I did not have to pee the whole movie. I was really surprised. But yeah, so, I mean, go see the movie at your own discretion. If you're a Scorsese fan, a DiCaprio fan, and all that, you're probably going to want to see it. You know, it is a good movie. But like I said, for me, you know, I felt like the last hour really, really dragged, and it's probably not a movie that I will revisit, although I do think it's an important movie, especially if you don't know anything about the history of the events that are at play. It's probably a movie that you might want to watch to kind of learn something about, you know, American history that you don't really hear talked about too often. Anyway, if you saw Killers of the Flower Moon, let me know what you think about it down below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you not feel the runtime at all? Did you, you know, couldn't stand the runtime? What did you think about the performances? Definitely don't think it's DiCaprio's best, but I think everybody gave a solid performance in it. Anyways, thanks for watching the video, guys. Give it a thumbs up and a comment if you enjoyed it. Also, if you want to support the channel on a deeper level, I have Patreon, channel memberships, merch store, all that linked down below. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you next time.